South Africa's rhino populations face relentless threats from poachers driven by illegal wildlife trade. Conservationists and park rangers risk their lives daily to protect these majestic creatures from harm. Poachers use sophisticated methods and weapons to hunt rhinos for horns that fetch huge sums abroad. The battle between humans who exploit and those who protect has become a fierce ongoing war. This video uncovers the tactics, dangers, and heroic efforts in the fight to save rhinos from extinction. You will see how rangers track poachers and work tirelessly to safeguard wildlife and preserve life. Stories of bravery emerge from those risking everything to defend rhinos against ruthless criminals. The conflict highlights the broader challenges of wildlife conservation in areas with high poaching rates. Stay tuned to understand how these protectors fight back and the impact on rhino survival today. Make sure to like this video and subscribe for more true stories revealing courage in the wild. 1. Rhino crisis begins. The Rhino War. Poachers versus protectors in South Africa escalated as horn demand rose globally. Poachers organized with advanced weapons targeting rhinos across South Africa's vulnerable reserves. Protectors formed rapid response teams to track and intercept poachers before rhinos were killed. South Africa became the epicenter of this conflict with high rhino populations at risk of extinction. Local communities faced ethical dilemmas between poaching income and protecting rhino heritage. Rangers fortified reserves using patrols, surveillance, and coordinated monitoring to prevent poaching. The Rhino War highlighted gaps in conservation funding and need for global wildlife support. Poachers used night operations and stealth tactics, making the Rhino War dangerous for all involved. Advanced tracking technology helped protect rhinos from the increasing poaching threat in South Africa. Community engagement programs educated locals about the value of rhino survival and protection. Poaching syndicates adapted quickly, intensifying the Rhino War across remote South African lands. Protectors collaborated with international organizations to strengthen anti-poaching operations. Rhinos became symbols of national pride and international conservation in the ongoing Rhino War. Efforts included not only protection but rehabilitation of injured rhinos and orphaned calves. The Rhino War demonstrated the critical importance of coordinated wildlife law enforcement in Africa. Media coverage brought awareness, increasing global donations and support for protector initiatives. Rhino horn smuggling networks were dismantled slowly through intelligence-driven strategies. The Rhino War created permanent changes in South African wildlife legislation and park policies. Protectors risked their lives daily, patrolling dangerous zones in the heart of poaching territories. This battle between poachers and protectors marked a defining moment in African rhino conservation. 2. Ranger frontline. Anti-poaching rangers are the heart of the Rhino War, poachers versus protectors in South Africa. They patrol day and night across vast reserves to prevent rhino poaching operations from succeeding. Rangers undergo intensive training in tracking, firearms, survival, and wildlife behavior for safety. The Rhino War made ranger work one of the most dangerous jobs in South African conservation. Rangers coordinate with intelligence networks to identify poaching hotspots and high-risk areas. Patrolling through bushland, rangers use night vision and drones to detect poachers in real time. Many rangers come from local communities, motivated by protecting wildlife for future generations. The Rhino War forces rangers to act quickly under extreme stress to save rhinos from harm. They respond to poacher encounters with caution, ensuring safety for rhinos and themselves. Rangers also monitor rhino health, recording injuries and population changes in the reserves. Protectors organize rapid intervention units to stop poachers before they reach targeted rhinos. Community outreach educates locals about poaching penalties and the importance of rhino survival. The Rhino War requires rangers to balance law enforcement with ecological preservation strategies. Equipment like GPS trackers, cameras, and patrol vehicles are essential for anti-poaching success. Rangers document every incident to support prosecutions of poachers under South African law. The Rhino War highlights the courage and dedication of rangers defending endangered wildlife. Despite high risks, rangers continue their mission to ensure rhinos survive in South Africa. Their daily vigilance forms the backbone of strategies to combat illegal horn trade networks. The Rhino War emphasizes training, resources, and community cooperation as keys to protection. Rangers remain the unsung heroes, risking life and safety to uphold conservation in Africa. 3. Poacher tactics. Poachers in the Rhino War. Poachers versus protectors in South Africa use sophisticated hunting methods. Illegal hunting networks operate with coordinated logistics, transport, and armed enforcement teams. Nighttime operations allow poachers to avoid detection while tracking rhino herds across reserves. They often employ GPS, drones, and silent firearms to improve success in the rhino war campaigns. Poachers target vulnerable populations, including calves and injured adult rhinos for maximum profit. Corrupt supply chains aid rhino smuggling operations connecting rural South Africa to global markets. The rhino war forced protectors to constantly innovate against evolving poacher techniques and strategies. Poachers exploit gaps in law enforcement and terrain knowledge to evade capture in bushland. High demand for rhino horns in international markets drives the persistence of poaching in South Africa. Poachers sometimes use poisons or traps, making the rhino war deadly for rhinos and humans alike. Protectors track poachers using informants, camera traps, and analysis of horn smuggling routes. Understanding poacher psychology helps predict patterns and prevent further rhino losses effectively. The rhino war demonstrates that poaching is both a criminal enterprise and a conservation crisis. Poachers work in organized teams, showing military-style precision and knowledge of wildlife behavior. Protectors must respond with intelligence, coordination, and real-time decision-making to save rhinos. The rhino war is an ongoing battle with constant adaptation on both sides of the conflict. 4. Rhino tracking. Tracking rhinos is a crucial component in the rhino war. Poachers versus protectors in South Africa. Rangers fit rhinos with GPS collars to monitor movements and prevent poachers from finding targets. Tracking allows protectors to anticipate poaching attempts and deploy rapid response teams immediately. The rhino war relies on continuous monitoring of rhino herds across multiple South African reserves. Protectors analyze patterns in rhino migration to safeguard populations during vulnerable periods. Camera traps supplement tracking, recording poacher activity and wildlife behavior simultaneously. Real-time alerts from tracking devices have prevented countless poaching incidents in South Africa. The rhino war demonstrates that technology combined with human vigilance increases rhino survival. Tracking rhino health and breeding activity aids conservation planning beyond poaching prevention. Protectors use data to coordinate patrol routes, reducing overlap and maximizing coverage efficiency. The rhino war also monitors horn removal attempts to intervene before fatalities occur in the field. Tracking enables long-term population assessments to inform policy and anti-poaching strategies. Rangers can track stolen or moved rhinos, aiding in investigations and anti-trafficking operations. The rhino war emphasizes data-driven protection to anticipate threats before poachers strike again. 5. Anti-poaching units. Specialized anti-poaching units are key in the rhino war. Poachers versus protectors in South Africa. Units operate in high-risk zones to intercept poachers before rhinos are harmed or horns removed. Teams combine intelligence, tracking, and tactical response to protect vulnerable rhino populations. The rhino war depends on coordination between park authorities, military, and conservation groups. Anti-poaching units conduct night and day patrols across remote South African wildlife reserves. Protectors use drones, night vision, and GPS to monitor illegal poaching activity effectively. Units work under extreme danger as poachers are often armed and highly organized in South Africa. Community collaboration supports these units by reporting suspicious activities near rhino habitats. Training includes firearms, navigation, animal behavior, and first aid to prepare for rhino war risks. Regular drills simulate poaching scenarios to improve efficiency and response time under pressure. Units gather evidence for prosecution, ensuring poachers are held accountable under South African law. The rhino war demonstrates that well-equipped units significantly reduce rhino mortality rates. Field coordination involves communication between rangers, reserve management, and law enforcement. Local communities play a vital role in the rhino war. Poachers versus protectors in South Africa. Education campaigns inform residents about the consequences of poaching and rhino endangerment. Communities provide intelligence on poacher movements, aiding anti-poaching efforts effectively. The rhino war relies on cooperation between locals, rangers, and conservation organizations. Economic incentives encourage communities to participate in rhino protection rather than poaching. Community rangers help patrol areas, increasing surveillance and reporting of suspicious activity. Awareness programs teach children and adults the ecological importance of rhinos in South Africa. Communities become active stakeholders, ensuring sustainable protection of local wildlife reserves. The rhino war shows that empowering locals reduces poaching pressure and supports conservation goals. Traditional practices sometimes conflict with protection, requiring sensitive community engagement. Workshops and seminars train locals in wildlife monitoring, first aid, and environmental stewardship. The Rhino War benefits from community participation by fostering a culture of protection and pride. Residents sometimes aid in rescuing injured rhinos or relocating calves for safety during poaching events. Community collaboration enhances rapid response capacity in high-risk poaching zones. Cultural programs promote rhino conservation as part of heritage and national pride. 7. Rhino recovery. Recovery programs are critical in the Rhino War, poachers versus protectors in South Africa. Rescuing injured rhinos after poaching incidents is the first step in population recovery efforts. Veterinary teams stabilize rhinos and provide emergency treatment to maximize survival chances. The Rhino War requires careful relocation of orphaned calves to safe sanctuaries for rehabilitation. Protectors track previously injured rhinos to ensure full recovery and long-term health outcomes. Recovery involves monitoring rhino behavior, feeding patterns, and stress indicators after trauma. The Rhino War includes breeding programs to maintain genetic diversity and strengthen populations. Rehabilitated rhinos are reintroduced carefully, ensuring adaptation to natural environments. Anti-poaching measures continue during recovery, as rhinos remain vulnerable to renewed attacks. The Rhino War demonstrates that protection and recovery must operate simultaneously for success. Satellite and GPS tracking aid in monitoring recovered rhinos to prevent future poaching incidents. Protectors document recovery outcomes to improve future conservation and treatment strategies. Recovery programs also provide educational opportunities for local and international supporters. The Rhino War highlights the importance of science-based strategies in conservation recovery efforts. 8. International support. Global collaboration strengthens the Rhino War, poachers versus protectors in South Africa. International organizations provide funding, technology, and expertise to support local protectors. The Rhino War benefits from intelligence sharing to track poachers across national borders. Foreign conservation groups supply drones, GPS devices, and surveillance tools to protect rhinos. Global awareness campaigns pressure governments to enforce strict anti-poaching laws in South Africa. The Rhino War highlights the interconnectedness of wildlife crime in international markets. Cross-border cooperation allows seizure of illegally trafficked rhino horns before reaching buyers. The Rhino War depends on continued foreign donations to maintain equipment and ranger salaries. International volunteers sometimes assist in monitoring and rehabilitation programs for rhinos. Partnerships with non-governmental organizations facilitate training programs for rangers and community conservation workers. The Rhino War demonstrates that rhino protection is a global responsibility, not just local. International conventions like CITES regulate the trade of rhino horns and other wildlife products. Support includes research grants to improve anti-poaching strategies and population monitoring. The Rhino War sees international media coverage raising awareness and promoting public support. Collaborative law enforcement targets criminal networks involved in the rhino horn trade. Sustained international involvement ensures rhinos have a fighting chance against poaching networks. 9. Horn trafficking. Illegal horn trade fuels the Rhino War, poachers versus protectors in South Africa. High demand in Asian markets drives poachers to target rhinos indiscriminately for profit. The Rhino War exposes complex trafficking networks spanning multiple countries and continents. Horns are smuggled using false documentation, hidden compartments, and covert transport methods. Protectors coordinate with customs and border agencies to intercept horn shipments effectively. The Rhino War highlights the link between organized crime and wildlife exploitation in South Africa. Tracking and seizing horns disrupts supply chains and deters further poaching activity. Awareness campaigns educate consumers about the consequences of horn purchase in South Africa. The Rhino War emphasizes monitoring online and physical markets to prevent illegal horn sales. Horns removed from poached rhinos are sometimes displayed in museums to raise awareness. The Rhino War underlines the economic and ecological impact of horn trafficking networks. Strict penalties and prosecutions aim to reduce poaching incentives while promoting protection. The Rhino War is a battle against both poachers in the field and organized criminals abroad. Global media highlights the demand side to complement anti-poaching measures in South Africa. The Rhino War demonstrates that the horn trade drives relentless pressure on rhino populations. Protectors must combat both poaching and trafficking simultaneously to save rhinos effectively. 10. Conservation hope. Despite the Rhino War, poachers versus protectors in South Africa, hope persists for rhino survival. Conservationists work tirelessly to protect rhinos through innovation, community engagement, and law. The Rhino War shows that dedication, technology, and awareness can reduce poaching pressures. Protected areas and national parks have successfully maintained stable rhino populations in some zones. The Rhino War inspires global support, funding, and volunteerism for rhino conservation projects. Breeding programs help sustain population numbers and genetic diversity across South African reserves. The Rhino War demonstrates that collaborative action creates tangible improvements for wildlife safety. Ranger training, community involvement, and intelligence networks strengthen conservation resilience. The Rhino War proves that coordinated efforts can overcome challenges posed by poachers and criminals. Ecotourism supports local economies, giving communities incentives to protect rhinos instead of poaching. The Rhino War encourages ongoing research into habitat restoration and anti-poaching technologies. Public awareness campaigns ensure continued global focus on the plight of South African rhinos. The Rhino War motivates young conservationists to join efforts and carry forward protection strategies. Conservation policies evolve based on lessons learned from successes and failures in the Rhino War. The Rhino War demonstrates that even threatened species can recover with focused protection. Education programs foster pride in rhino heritage among local communities and visitors alike. The Rhino War shows that hope is sustained through action, vigilance, and global cooperation. 11. Anti-poaching technology. Advanced technology strengthens the Rhino War, poachers versus protectors in South Africa dramatically. Drones are deployed to survey reserves, spotting poachers before rhinos are targeted for horns. Thermal cameras allow protectors to detect movement during night, reducing poaching risks significantly. GPS tracking of rhinos ensures rapid response if a poacher approaches vulnerable animals in South Africa. Camera traps capture evidence, identifying poachers and preventing further attacks in real time. The Rhino War integrates satellite monitoring to assess habitat threats and poacher access points. Communication devices enable instant coordination between rangers and high-risk poaching zones. Anti-poaching technology reduces reaction time during emergencies, increasing rhino survival chances. The Rhino War benefits from predictive software that models poacher behavior based on historical data. Remote sensing aids in detecting illegal paths and camps used by poachers within wildlife reserves. Technology supports both surveillance and data analysis, informing strategic deployment of protectors. The Rhino War shows that human expertise paired with technology maximizes rhino protection efficiency. 12. Legal enforcement. Law enforcement is critical in the Rhino War, poachers versus protectors in South Africa to deter crimes. Strict penalties for poaching reduce incentives for illegal hunting of rhinos across the country. The Rhino War relies on legal frameworks supporting arrests, prosecutions, and imprisonment of poachers. Special wildlife courts expedite cases involving rhino horn crimes to ensure justice is delivered swiftly. Rangers gather irrefutable evidence during patrols to strengthen cases against poachers in South Africa. The Rhino War demonstrates that consistent enforcement of laws significantly reduces poaching incidents. Customs officials intercept rhino horn shipments, collaborating internationally to combat trafficking networks. The Rhino War includes legal protection for sanctuary lands, preventing encroachment by poachers. Government agencies monitor compliance with anti-poaching regulations across private and public reserves. The Rhino War relies on legislation supporting protective measures, including fences and surveillance systems. Judicial cooperation ensures that convicted poachers face consequences, discouraging repeat offenses. The Rhino War highlights that enforcement alone is insufficient without community cooperation and education. 13. Habitat preservation. Protecting rhino habitats is essential in the Rhino War, poachers versus protectors in South Africa. Deforestation and land conversion increase poaching risks by reducing secure areas for rhinos to roam. The Rhino War emphasizes that habitat restoration allows rhinos to live safely away from poacher threats. Reserves and national parks provide controlled environments, reducing rhino exposure to illegal hunters. The Rhino War demonstrates that protecting critical grazing areas supports population growth and health. Buffer zones between human settlements and reserves minimize encounters with poachers in South Africa. The Rhino War encourages reforestation to improve ecological balance and sustain rhino food sources. Water sources and shelter zones are protected to ensure rhinos survive seasonal droughts and pressures. The Rhino War highlights that secure, well-managed habitats reduce stress and increase rhino reproductive success. Conservation planning incorporates anti-poaching patrol routes along habitat corridors for efficiency. The Rhino War shows that combining ecological research with protective measures strengthens rhino safety. Vegetation mapping helps rangers predict rhino movement and allocate resources to high-risk areas. The Rhino War demonstrates that habitat connectivity ensures rhinos can migrate without poacher interference. Protected corridors allow rhinos to escape immediate threats while accessing essential feeding areas. The Rhino War relies on habitat security as much as active patrols to mitigate poaching losses. Land management policies are implemented to balance human activity with rhino conservation needs. 14. Rhino breeding programs strengthen the Rhino War. Poachers versus protectors in South Africa against extinction. Captive and semi-wild breeding help maintain genetic diversity and resilient rhino populations. The Rhino War shows that scientific intervention is vital when wild populations are under heavy poaching pressure. Protected sanctuaries allow rhinos to reproduce safely away from the threat of poachers. The Rhino War integrates veterinary care, nutritional support, and monitoring of pregnant rhinos. Calf survival programs provide additional protection until young rhinos can defend themselves naturally. The Rhino War demonstrates that maintaining population growth is essential for long-term species survival. Genetic studies prevent inbreeding and ensure healthy, adaptive rhino populations in South African reserves. The Rhino War relies on combining breeding programs with field protection to sustain wild herds. Artificial insemination has been used in some cases to enhance genetic diversity among rhinos. 15. Ranger training is the backbone of the Rhino War. Poachers versus protectors in South Africa. Rangers undergo rigorous courses in tracking, firearms, survival, and wildlife protection strategies. The Rhino War emphasizes that preparedness saves both rhinos and rangers in high-risk operations. Tactical simulations prepare teams for poacher encounters and emergency medical scenarios in the field. The Rhino War demonstrates that continuous training adapts protectors to evolving poacher tactics. Rangers learn to use technology, including GPS, drones, and thermal cameras, effectively in operations. The Rhino War highlights teamwork, communication, and decision-making under life-threatening conditions. Ranger training also includes first aid for both humans and wildlife injured during the Rhino War. The Rhino War relies on scenario-based exercises to test and improve rapid response capabilities. Rangers are educated on local ecosystems, rhino behavior, and poacher psychology for strategic advantage. The Rhino War demonstrates that skill and knowledge reduce casualties and maximize protection success. Advanced survival training ensures rangers can operate for extended periods in remote, dangerous terrain. The Rhino War integrates legal knowledge into training to ensure proper evidence collection and prosecution. Rangers are trained in stealth and camouflage to minimize detection during patrols against poachers. The Rhino War requires both physical endurance and mental resilience to face constant poaching threats. Field leadership programs enhance coordination, ensuring effective team management during incidents. 16. Wildlife corridors link protected areas in the Rhino War. Poachers versus protectors in South Africa. They allow rhinos to migrate safely between reserves without encountering poachers or human threats. The Rhino War demonstrates that connectivity is vital for population expansion and genetic diversity. Corridors are monitored to prevent poachers from setting traps or ambushing rhinos along the paths. The Rhino War relies on maintaining vegetation and natural cover to provide safe travel routes. Community cooperation ensures corridors are respected and kept free from illegal activity. The Rhino War shows that without corridors, isolated rhinos face higher mortality and reduced breeding. Fencing and surveillance are strategically implemented to balance security with freedom of movement. The Rhino War emphasizes integrating corridors into broader conservation planning for long-term survival. Natural water sources along corridors are preserved to support rhino health during migrations. Corridor monitoring includes patrols, camera traps, and satellite imagery for continuous protection. The Rhino War relies on combining ecological planning with anti-poaching enforcement along routes. Safe corridors reduce stress on rhinos, increasing reproductive success and resilience to threats. The Rhino War shows that collaboration with local landowners enhances corridor protection efforts. Education programs raise awareness about the importance of these pathways in the Rhino War context. The Rhino War proves that corridors are a strategic tool to outmaneuver poachers and safeguard rhinos. 17. Community involvement. Community engagement is crucial in the Rhino War. Poachers versus protectors in South Africa. Locals report poaching activity, helping rangers respond swiftly and protect rhino populations. The Rhino War shows that educating communities reduces poacher recruitment and increases vigilance. Workshops and outreach programs teach sustainable land practices to safeguard rhino habitats. The Rhino War relies on collaboration between conservationists and local residents for intelligence. Communities are incentivized to participate in ecotourism initiatives, reducing reliance on poaching. The Rhino War demonstrates that local support enhances morale and effectiveness of protectors. Youth programs promote wildlife conservation awareness from an early age in the Rhino War context. The Rhino War integrates cultural and social activities to strengthen bonds between rangers and locals. Community patrol groups supplement professional ranger efforts to monitor rhino movements safely. The Rhino War emphasizes transparency and sharing anti-poaching successes to build trust. Public recognition for community contributors encourages ongoing participation in rhino protection. The Rhino War shows that informed communities serve as early warning systems for poaching threats. Collaborative mapping exercises identify critical areas requiring additional security in South Africa. The Rhino War proves that empowered locals are indispensable allies in protecting rhino populations. Sustained engagement ensures long-term resilience and continuity in the Rhino War efforts. 18. International support. Global partnerships enhance the Rhino War, poachers versus protectors in South Africa. International funding supports anti-poaching operations and technological advancements. The Rhino War relies on cross-border intelligence to track horn trafficking networks worldwide. The Rhino War demonstrates that global advocacy increases political pressure against poaching. Collaborative research initiatives improve rhino breeding and habitat management strategies. The Rhino War benefits from donations for infrastructure like surveillance towers and ranger vehicles. International law enforcement coordination helps intercept illegal horn shipments and traffickers. The Rhino War shows that awareness campaigns abroad increase tourism and support for conservation. Global conferences facilitate knowledge exchange and adoption of best practices in rhino protection. The Rhino War integrates international volunteers in non-lethal support roles for field operations. Funding for ecological studies ensures that habitat management aligns with rhino safety requirements. The Rhino War highlights how global media coverage deters poaching by increasing public scrutiny. Joint training programs improve tactical skills, intelligence gathering, and operational planning. 19. Rhino relocation. Relocation is a key strategy in the Rhino War, poachers versus protectors in South Africa. Rhinos are moved from high-risk poaching zones to secure reserves to ensure their safety. The Rhino War demonstrates that relocation minimizes immediate poacher access and protects populations. Veterinary teams monitor health and stress levels during transport to reduce mortality. Tracking devices are fitted to relocated rhinos to ensure ongoing protection and monitoring. The Rhino War shows that relocating individuals can support genetic diversity across reserves. Soft release programs allow rhinos to acclimate gradually to new territories in South Africa. The Rhino War relies on secure holding areas before integration into larger protected habitats. Coordination with local authorities ensures that relocation does not create new poaching vulnerabilities. The Rhino War demonstrates that transport logistics are critical to reducing animal stress and injury. Post-relocation monitoring informs future strategies for habitat selection and rhino dispersal. The Rhino War emphasizes community engagement in release sites to prevent interference or poaching. Selection of relocation sites considers food availability, water access, and shelter for rhinos. 20. Future strategies. Future planning strengthens the Rhino War, poachers versus protectors in South Africa sustainably. Innovations in surveillance, technology, and rangers' tactics are central to evolving protection measures. The Rhino War relies on predictive models to anticipate poaching trends and deploy resources effectively. Integration of ecological research ensures rhino habitats remain resilient against human pressures. The Rhino War emphasizes cross-sector collaboration between government, non-governmental organizations, and local communities. Funding strategies are designed for long-term anti-poaching initiatives and wildlife management programs. The Rhino War shows that education campaigns prepare future generations to value and protect rhinos. Policy development supports stricter penalties, enhanced monitoring, and cross-border law enforcement. The Rhino War relies on adaptive approaches, responding to new threats in poaching dynamics over time. Investment in ranger training and equipment ensures continued effectiveness in rhino protection. The Rhino War demonstrates that balancing conservation with economic and community interests is vital. Sustainable tourism initiatives provide alternative livelihoods to reduce local reliance on poaching. The Rhino War highlights the need for innovation in reproductive programs and population management. Environmental monitoring guides decisions about corridors, relocation, and reserve expansion. Rangers and conservationists remain vigilant to protect these endangered animals from illegal hunters. Efforts to increase awareness and strengthen anti-poaching laws are critical for rhino survival. Communities and governments are joining forces to combat wildlife crime and protect natural heritage. Like this video and subscribe for more real stories highlighting bravery in wildlife conservation. Share your thoughts and support for protecting endangered species in the comments below today. Thanks for watching and helping us raise awareness for the fight to save these incredible creatures.